Aye! Good day mga kapadyak, kapatid at mga darling. Today, pag-uusapan natin ang isang kakaibang topic na history of cycling, world wars, at modern bikes. Aye! Bago natin pag-usapan ang history ng cycling, alamin muna natin ang history ng mga bisikleta. Baka naman magtataka kayo kung bakit bigla naging history ang topic natin ngayon after sa maraming cycling action vlogs natin. Yan ay dahil mahilig din ako magbasa ng mga bagay-bagay tungkol sa history. In fact, for several years as a registered licensed architect and a former UAP Qatar chapter president, nagle-lecture din ako sa mga architecture board exam review class at sa Philippine School Doha Career Simulation Seminar related sa subject na History of Architecture. Since may passion din naman ako sa mga history-related matters, might as well na pag-usapan na rin natin ang history of cycling. Ang bisikleta o ang bicycle ay isang human-powered pedal-driven single-track vehicle, usually having two wheels attached to a frame. Noong 1817, nadiskubre ng isang German baron na si Karl von Drais ang isang bisikleta made of wood na tinatawag na Dreisen or velocipede. Ang design ay naging patent in 1818 at naging kauna-unahang commercially successful two-wheeled, steerable, human-propelled machines available in France and Germany. Noong 1820 to 1850s, nag-umpisa na rin ma-develop ang mga 3 and 4-wheelers na sa panahon ngayon ay maaaring tinatawag natin na tricycle at quadricycles. At noong 1853 ay na-revolutionize ni Philip Moritz Fischer ang design ng bicycle dahil sa pag-introduce niya ng kauna-unahang bicycle with pedals. It was in the 1960s nang ma-introduce nila ang design sa paglagay ng rotary cranks sa front wheels ng bike. And ang concept ng velocipede or also called bone shaker was born. Ito ang naging pundasyon ng mga design ng mga bisikleta at ng mga modern bicycles ngayong araw. At dito na rin nag-umpisa ang karerahan ng mga bisikleta. In 1870s, based sa design ng bone shaker bicycles, may pinalabas na design si Eugene Meyer ng high-wheeled bicycle para lalong mapabilis ang takbo ng bisikleta. Ito ay tinatawag na penny farthing. Sa bagong design na to, medyo bumilis nga ang takbo ng bike, pero madalas, semplang naman ang aabutan ng rider at napakahirap sakyan kahit ng mga modern day cyclists. In 1885, John Kemp Starley produced the first successful safety bicycle called the Rover. Dito na na-introduce ang paggamit ng chain drive rear wheel at dito na rin unang na-introduce ang paggamit ng pneumatic tires o yung gulong na may karga na compressed air. Ang paggamit ng drivetrain ay nagbigay ginhawa sa pagbibisikleta dahil sa stable performance na dulot nito. In the Philippines, bicycles were first introduced during the Spanish colonial period in the 1880s and was quickly adopted by the Filipinos. Once ang Manila ay kinikilala ang cycling as a booming mode of transportation among the local population. Ang pinakaunang karera ng bisikleta sa Pilipinas ay ginanap noong 1894 sa Luneta. 20th century starts with the introduction of utility bicycles such as the Roadster. Cycling remains popular with more than 1 billion people worldwide and used for recreation, transportation, and sports. In Europe, cycling remains to be an adult activity used for racing, commuting, and cycling tour. In addition, specialist bicycle for children appeared before 1916. During the outbreak of World War I, bicycles were quickly used for reconnaissance missions to carry out messages and small supplies. Soon, they were used to transport troops to increase mobility, silent movement, and allow soldiers to carry more supplies and ammunition compared to a foot soldier. Germans were the first one to introduce an independent company called the Bicycle Company. The Italians equipped their light infantry with folding bikes. In World War II, bicycles were introduced to paratroopers as a means of transport after the landing. US troops used them as a light transport for messengers. In 1937 invasion of China, Japanese used 50,000 bicycle troops. In the Philippines in 1942, There were around more than 12,000 bicycles in the city of Manila alone for the population of 9,000 people. During the Japanese occupation, Manila surrenders and was declared an open city. Most of these bicycles were confiscated by the Japanese Imperial Army for the use of bicycle infantry to carry supplies, weapons, and ammunition. Perhaps the most famous use of bicycle was during World War II during the Japan's Southern Campaign in 1941 through the Malaysian route for the capture of Singapore. Japanese troops landed along the South Thailand border north of Malaysia and started to mobilize south by the use of bicycles and systematically confiscating more bicycles among the local population. The Japanese Imperial Army gained an advantage by traveling faster than withdrawing Allied troops, often successfully cutting their retreat. It seems that the first tour of Malaysia happened in 1941 by the Japanese Imperial Army, who used bicycles as a means of transportation from the Thai borders to Johor, south of Malaysia, overlooking Singapore for a total of about 911 kilometers. In early 1942, after the Japanese troops reached the coast of Johor, they started to cross the Johor Strait toward Singapore by means of boats and capture bridges. After 7 days of heavy fighting, with Japan's air superiority, British Singapore, known as the Gibraltar of the East, under the command of Lieutenant General Percival, surrendered to the Japanese Imperial Army under the command of General Yamashita, known as the Tiger of Malaya. General Yamashita was well known for the defense of Luzon against the Allied forces for the liberation of the Philippines in World War II and for the famous so-called Yamashita treasure hidden in the Philippines. In September 2, 1945, Japan formally surrendered to the Allied forces under General Douglas MacArthur aboard the battleship Missouri.
Let us pray that peace be now restored to the world and that God will preserve it always. These proceedings are closed.
Right after the surrender of Japan, General Yamashita, with his 50,000 troops stationed in Kiangan, Ifugao Province, was captured and surrendered to the Allied forces in the presence of General Wainwright and General Percival, who surrendered to General Yamashita during the Battle of Singapore. And in 1946, General Tomoyuki Yamashita was tried and was found guilty of war crimes.
We gotta get out of this place. Girl, there's a better life for me and you.
The Vietnam War. Vietnam War was probably the first war that can be seen in national television. During the course of the Vietnam War, Viet Cong and North Vietnamese Army used bicycles as one of the means of transportation to carry loads and supplies along the Ho Chi Minh Hidden Trail in the thick jungle forest near the borders of Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia.
Forced the creation of a primitive method for keeping supply lines open. Claims the use of bicycles dates back to the French Indo-Chinese War. They say that 10 specially reinforced bicycles can carry a load comparable to a 2-ton truck's capacity. Their ability to negotiate narrow bamboo bridges, which replace bombed-out structures, reportedly give them an extra advantage. They make smaller targets, but are obviously much slower than motor vehicles, a strange procession in a strange war.
But despite the heavy bombings along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, supply still comes through. Throughout the war, the Americans have dropped the total of 8 million tons of bombs and a total of 50,000 bombing missions throughout Vietnam and Ho Chi Minh Trail. Due to a strong anti-war protest back in the US, the public are becoming aware of the cost of American lives lost in the Vietnam War. In 1975, the Americans finally withdrew completely from Vietnam. It marks the day of the fall of Saigon, end of the Vietnam War, and the reunification of Vietnam into a socialist republic of Vietnam. During the mid-20th century, meron dalawang klaseng bisikleta ang madalas ginagamit. Ito ay ang cruiser at ang racers. In the 1950s, nag-umpisa ang production ng mga lightweight racers. In the 1960s, naging aware ang mga tao sa value of cycling as a means of exercise and as an energy-efficient means of transportation. Since then, nagkaroon ng boom ng production ng mga bisikleta sa buong mundo. Ngayong araw ay tinatawag natin ang mga bisikleta na to as road bikes. In early 1970s, lumabas ang isang model ng bike na naging popular sa mga teenager. Ito ay ang motocross bike or BMX kung tawagin. Mas lalo naging popular in the early 1980s nung may lumipad na mga BMX bikes sa isang pelikula directed by Steven Spielberg, which is the E.T. or Extraterrestrial. At the same time in the 80s, lumabas na rin ang isang bagong design ng bike na gusto ng karamihan. Ito ay ang mountain bikes. At sa panahon na rin na to, dito na rin naglabasan ang mga fat bikes. Ang mountain bikes ay lalong naging popular noong 1990s nung nagkaroon ng TV series tungkol sa mga bicycle police, which is called the Pacific Blue. Until today, tuloy pa rin ginagamit ng mga police bicycle patrol sa iba't ibang bansa with temperate climate ang mountain bikes due to easy maneuver to navigate over narrow and crowded driveways. In recent years, ang design ng mga bikes ay nakabase na rin depende sa pangangailangan ng isang siklista. Dito na lumabas ang tinatawag na hybrid bikes or sometimes tinatawag na city bike, cross bike, or commuter bike. 21st century also marks the production of more designs of e-bikes, although it was first documented within the US as early as in the 1890s. At the turn of the 20th centuries, bicycles allowed people to travel for leisure into the country since bicycles were 3 times as energy efficient as walking and 3 or 4 times faster than walk. In built-up cities around the world, urban planning uses cycling infrastructures like bike lanes to reduce traffic congestion and air pollution. A number of cities around the world have implemented schemes known as bicycle sharing system or community bicycle programs. Bicycles are one of the best invention of mankind in this planet. It will give you lots of health benefits, reduce traffic, reduce air pollution, and energy efficiency. It simply means that at peace times or war times, the age of bicycles are here to stay.
How the traffic signals work and how the whole interaction and system works. So now Pascal, at almost 5, is a perfectly competent little city cyclist.
So, that's all folks. If you like the show, please help my channel grow. Once again, this is Kuya Rix TV saying, if you talk about cycling, remember that we share the same passion. Thank you for watching, stay safe, and see you next time. Ay yeah!